Dust fell like ash over the mines of Dareth 9, coating the air with the taste of metal and despair. Beneath the broken sky, where the light of the twin suns could not pierce the smog, human laborers moved in silence, chained to their drills. The machines screamed with every turn, a mechanical echo of the lives wasted inside the tunnels. Corin Vale watched from the shadows, his breath steady, hand resting on the grip of his pulse rifle. The rhythm of the guards' patrols was burned into his mind, for O'Reilly overseers, 1 drone sentinel, 2 shifts rotating every 30 minutes. He waited for the signal. A faint hum rippled through the mine shafts, the coded frequency only the free fleets used. Corin's helmet flickered, displaying a single word, now. He exhaled, rose from the rubble, and motioned forward. Shadows moved with him, men and women in scavenged armor, faces hidden, hearts beating the same rhythm of revolt. The first shot came silent, a pulse bolt through the eye of an O'Reilly guard, shattering the crystalline shell beneath its light. The alien collapsed soundlessly, a sculpture broken mid-motion. Then the storm began. Explosions tore through the scaffolds. Workers dropped their tools, some screaming, some stunned into stillness. The air shimmered as laser fire lanced through the haze. Corin's squad surged forward, cutting through chains, shoving the dazed captives toward the exits. The O'Reilly reacted with their usual arrogance, rising above the fight on anti-grav platforms, shouting in their native tongue, their skin flaring with violent light patterns of command. Corin fired back, driving a shot into the core of a drone. The blast hurled him against a wall, shards of metal embedding into his shoulder. He gritted his teeth, pulled himself upright, and kept moving. Pain was an old companion. A figure stumbled from the shadows ahead, a human miner, face streaked with grime and blood. They said, no one would come, the man whispered. Corin grabbed his wrist and pushed a detonator into his palm. We came, he said. Now go. Blow the north gate when you see the flare. The man nodded and vanished into the smoke. The battle raged upward through the levels. The mines, once dug for O'Reilly crystal, became a maze of fire and echoes. Corin's visor displayed the life signs of his team, one by one, they flickered and went dark. He felt the loss but didn't slow. The mission wasn't victory, it was extraction. Get the slaves out. Burn the rest. The rebellion had no luxury for triumphs. A sharp voice cut through the calm channel. Vale, we're pinned near the lift shaft. Need cover. It was Mira, his second in command. Corin sprinted toward her beacon, firing bursts to clear the path. He reached the shaft just as an O'Reilly overseer descended from above, wrapped in light armor that shimmered like molten glass. It moved with terrifying grace, its weapon humming like a living thing. Corin ducked as a plasma bolt seared past, melting the metal behind him. He rolled, aimed, and fired 3 precise shots. The alien's shield shattered, and the final bolt caught it through the chest. It fell, light fading from its body until only a dull gray remained. Go! Corin barked. Mira and the others pushed the freed workers into the cargo lift. You're coming? She asked. Corin shook his head. I'll trigger the collapse from the lower tunnels. She opened her mouth to argue, saw the look in his eyes, and didn't. The lift doors shut, rising toward the surface and the waiting free fleet transports. Corin turned back into the tunnels, alone. The smoke thickened, and the floor trembled under his boots. The detonators were set along the main supports, one last push, and the mine would bury itself and every Aurelian still inside. But as he reached the last junction, his scanner picked up something strange, an energy signature buried deeper than the rest, pulsing faintly. Not Aurelian machinery. Older. Forgotten. He hesitated, then followed the signal. The passage narrowed, leading him into a cavern untouched by drills. The walls glowed faintly with crystalline veins, forming patterns too deliberate to be natural. In the center lay a massive figure of armor, humanoid, elegant, cracked open along the chest plate. It was blackened with age but still emanated power. The markings along its frame were unmistakable, the sigil of Saren Tao, the Aurelian champion who had once saved his life. Memories flashed, Saren standing over him years ago, a slave's collar burning around his neck, saying, "No being is born lesser. Only taught to kneel." The voice had stayed with him even after the champion fell in battle. Corrin approached slowly, kneeling beside the relic. The armor's core pulsed once, like a heartbeat. He reached out, and dust cascaded from its surface. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered, half to himself. The armor didn't answer, but a faint shimmer rippled across its surface, a response like recognition. Corrin removed a small data shard from his belt, scanning the suit. The reading spiked. Power source active. Neural link dormant. Impossible, he breathed. The Aurelie destroyed all champion armors after their bearers fell. But this one had survived. And it had waited. He felt something beneath his glove, a subtle vibration that traveled through his bones. A whisper, not of words but of emotion, grief, pride, memory. It was like standing before a ghost that still remembered being alive. Footsteps echoed behind him. Corrin spun, rifle raised, but it was only the last of the freed miners, limping and bleeding. "Sir, the timers are ready," the man gasped. "We have to go." Corrin hesitated, eyes lingering on the armor. For a heartbeat, he imagined Saren's face reflected in its broken visor, watching him. He rose, gave a short nod, and turned toward the exit. "Light the fuse." The ground shuddered as the first charges went off. Fire ripped through the tunnels, consuming everything. Corrin and the miner sprinted for the surface, the collapsing ceiling chasing them like a living beast. They burst through the final shaft just as the explosion swallowed the mine behind them. A wave of heat hurled them into the dirt. When Corrin looked back, the sky was red with rising flames. The mines of Dareth 9 were gone. The chains were gone. Above the inferno, rebel transports broke atmosphere, carrying the freed captives toward the stars. Corrin watched in silence. The mission was done. But deep beneath the rubble, in the buried chamber, the armor of Saren Tao stirred once more, its eyes flickering to life with a light as old as the Dominion itself. The hangar of the Ardent Reach vibrated with the hum of departing transports. Freed slaves shuffled through the bay, wrapped in soot and exhaustion, their eyes searching for faces that were no longer there. Corrin Vale stood apart from them, stripping the grime from his rifle and ignoring the ache in his shoulder. The medics had offered treatment, he'd waved them away. Pain kept him present. It reminded him that the job wasn't over. The mines of Dareth 9 had fallen, but the Dominion would come for blood. Through the cracked viewport, the void glimmered with the pale lights of a dying empire. The Aurelie ships patrolled the sector like silver predators. Corrin's reflection caught his eye, scarred, hollow, older than he remembered. Saren Tao's voice whispered from a buried corner of memory, "Strength without purpose is just cruelty reborn." He clenched his jaw, shutting the thought away. "Vale," a voice called behind him. Commander Juno Rest strode into the hangar, coat still streaked with dust. She was shorter than him but radiated command like a force field. "You brought back 216 souls," she said. "And cost the Dominion 3 mines. Not bad for a week's work." "Not good enough," Corrin replied. "They'll rebuild. They always rebuild." Juno studied him. "You've been down there too long. Get some rest before you burn out completely." "Rest?" he muttered, turning toward the observation deck. "Slaves don't rest. We wait." Before she could respond, an alert flared across the consoles. A holographic projection filled the air, Aurelian sigils, crisp and elegant, carrying the seal of House Kane. The transmission burned through every frequency, impossible to ignore. Juno frowned. "Open channel." A figure materialized in blue light, a young Aurelian woman draped in armor like molten glass. Her crystalline skin shimmered with disdainful radiance. Her voice, melodic and cruel, carried through the deck. To the vermin who defile our dominion, hear me. Corin's gaze hardened. He knew that voice. Lady Virella Kane, heir of the fallen champion Saren Tau. The irony burned in his chest. You have desecrated our minds and stolen our property, she continued, each word soaked in arrogance. You freed slaves who were never yours to command. You think your defiance gives you dignity? You are nothing more than the dust beneath our feet. Juno motioned to cut the signal, but Corin stepped forward. Leave it. Virella's eyes flicked as if she could sense him through the feed. And to the human who leads this rabble, she said, her voice sharpening. Corin Vale, was it? You wore our chains once. How fitting that you now forge your own. The galaxy knows your place. You're just a slave pretending to be free. The words landed like a blade sliding under the ribs. The room fell silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to hold its breath. Corin didn't flinch, didn't speak, but the knuckles on his rifle turned white. Juno's hand touched his arm. She wants you angry. Don't give her what she wants. He didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the projection, on the sneer that reminded him of every overseer who had ever called him by a number instead of a name. Virella smiled faintly, sensing the tension. When I reclaim what was stolen from House Kane, I'll have you brought before me. I'll see how loud your defiance is without your armor and your toys. Perhaps I'll make you kneel, just to remind the galaxy what you are. The transmission cut, leaving only silence and a fading shimmer of her image. The crew exhaled, muttering curses. Someone spat on the floor. Corin turned away from the console and walked toward the weapon racks. Juno followed, lowering her voice. You're not thinking straight. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and half the fleet needs refueling. You go after her now, and you'll lose more than pride. She wears his sigil, Corin said quietly. Saren's crest was on her armor. She's his kin, Juno said. That's what the O'Reilly do, inherit power, legacy, everything. Including the right to spit on the rest of us. Corin's hand hovered over his sidearm before pulling it free and setting it aside. Saren saved me once. He said I'd learn what freedom meant when I could face an Aurelian without fear. Maybe that time's come. Juno folded her arms. And what then? You kill her, and they'll call it martyrdom. You let her live, and she'll hunt you until the stars go cold. Either way, the Dominion wins. Maybe, he said. But not today. He left the hangar, the doors sliding shut behind him. The corridors of the Ardent Reach were narrow and dim, built from salvaged Dominion steel. He passed groups of freed slaves whispering prayers of thanks, others silent, still waiting for the feeling of chains that were no longer there. One child reached out as he passed, touching his gloved hand. Is it really over? She asked. He stopped. No, he said softly. But it's starting. He reached the armory and keyed the private chamber open. The relic from Dareth 9 lay on the bench, Saren Tau's armor, fractured but alive. The faint pulse of its core reflected against the walls like a heartbeat. He approached, drawn by something between reverence and dread. The armor responded to his presence, faint lines of light crawling across its surface. He brushed his fingers along the chest plate, feeling the hum beneath the metal. The whisper returned, clearer this time. You survived. Corin froze. The voice wasn't memory, it was real, inside his mind. You survived, it repeated, and you came back to me. He drew his hand away. I came back for answers, he murmured. Not ghosts. The armor dimmed, retreating into silence. He stood there for a long time, staring at the reflection of his scarred face in its surface. Virella's words echoed in his head like poison. You're just a slave. He exhaled slowly, closing his eyes. I was, he said under his breath. I was. Outside the viewport, the fleet prepared for another jump. The stars stretched into streaks of white as the ardent reach slipped into the void. Somewhere across the galaxy, Lady Varela Kane watched the same stars, sharpening her blade, dreaming of vengeance. Neither of them knew it yet, but their war had already begun. The ship drifted in the shadow of a dying star, its hull reflecting the crimson light that bled across the void. The ardent reach had gone silent, her engines dormant, her crew asleep or pretending to be. Corin Vale sat alone in the forge bay, stripped of his armor, stripped of everything but thought. Before him, sealed behind containment fields and half-dismantled restraints, stood the relic from Dareth 9, the armor of Serental. It had been 3 days since he'd pulled it from the ruins. 3 days of engineers and medics and mystics failing to understand it. Every test returned the same impossible readings: it was alive. It pulsed like something with a heart, resonating faintly when he drew near, as though it recognized him and only him. Now, in the silence, it breathed. Corin ran a hand through his hair, watching the faint glow that rolled beneath the armor's blackened surface. He tried ignoring it, pretending the whispers in the dark corners of his mind were echoes from exhaustion. But the whispers had become a voice, patient and waiting. "You are ready." He looked up sharply. The words weren't spoken aloud, but they filled the room, brushing against his thoughts like cold fingertips. "No," he said quietly. "Not yet. The war waits for no one," the voice replied, gentle but insistent. "You freed them from chains, but not from fear. You cannot lead with empty hands." He stood, approaching the armor. The containment field shimmered faintly, the air around it thick with static. "You're not him," he muttered. "Serental died on Kareth. I saw his body." "You saw a shell," the voice said. "I am what remained. His memory. His intent. You carry his debt." He hesitated, staring at the faint reflection of his own scarred face on the armor's surface. His debt. He thought of the champion's words the day he'd freed Corin from the overseers: "Live so that no one can chain you again." For years he'd fought by that creed, but the words had turned hollow. The Dominion was still alive, and so was the hate. The containment alarms flickered. The armor's restraints trembled as its power surged. "Stop," Corin said, but the voice ignored him. The field collapsed with a hiss, and the pieces of the armor shifted, reassembling in the air like a creature awakening from sleep. The chest plate opened, its interior pulsing with dim light. "Choose," it whispered. "Let the old blood die, or wear its power and make it your own." Corin took a step back. He'd seen what Aurelian armor could do: merge with its bearer, rewrite them from the inside out, fusing flesh and machine until nothing remained of the original mind. It was slavery, just of a different kind. "I'm not one of you," he said. "You are what you choose to become," it answered. Saren chose mercy. You must choose purpose. The forge bay lights dimmed as energy bled from the power core. The armor unfolded completely now, standing tall, a silent figure of alien majesty. The air vibrated with power. Corin felt the pull in his chest, as if some invisible thread connected his heartbeat to the armor's rhythm. He reached out a hand, trembling, stopping inches from the surface. Images flooded his mind: Serental standing before the Aurelian High Council, refusing to execute captured humans, the look of betrayal in his own commander's eyes, the explosion that took him. Corin stumbled back, gasping. The memories weren't his. The armor had shown them to him. "You were killed for mercy," he said aloud. "He was killed for defiance," the armor replied. "The same reason you will be." Corin's pulse pounded. "If I wear you, I'll become what I hate. If you don't, you will remain what they made you." For a long moment, there was only silence, the hum of the ship, the sound of his breathing, the faint tremor of power in the air. Then he stepped forward, pressing his hand to the armor's chest plate. The light surged beneath his palm, hot and cold at once. The armor opened, and the world became white fire. Pain consumed him. Needles of energy pierced his nerves, filling his veins with molten metal. He fell to his knees, clawing at his own skin as the armor crawled over him, fusing to his body. Every breath felt like drowning in starlight. His mind screamed, but beneath the pain, he heard the whisper again, steady and calm. Breathe. I will not take from you. I will build with you. Then, suddenly, silence. The pain faded. Corrin opened his eyes. The world looked sharper, clearer. He could see the pulse of the ship's systems through the walls, hear the thrum of energy like a heartbeat. He looked down, his hands encased in dark crystal, veins of light threading through the armor like living tissue. He rose unsteadily. The armor moved with him, weightless, as if it had always been his. Across the room, a mirror shard caught his reflection. The figure staring back was not Aurelian, not human, something in between. A ghost reborn. You are not him, the voice said within his mind. But you carry what he could not finish. The doors hissed open. Juno Rest stood there, eyes widening. What in the hell did you do? Corrin turned toward her. The armor's lines pulsed faintly, like veins of light under his skin. What I had to. She took a cautious step forward. You don't know what that thing will do to you. He looked past her to the viewport where the stars drifted beyond the ship's hull. Neither do they. The armor's core flared once, casting the forge in light. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw Sarental's silhouette behind him, standing proud, watching. Then it was gone. The voice returned one last time, soft as a breath. Now we begin. Corrin walked past Juno, the faint shimmer of his new armor reflecting off the corridor walls. Every step echoed with the weight of a promise he didn't remember making. Far away, deep in the Dominion's heart, sensors stirred, detecting a signal that hadn't been heard since the last of the champions fell. Somewhere on Viral Prime, Lady Virella Kane lifted her head from sleep, feeling the pulse in her bones. The champion's armor lived again. The storm over Caratha's moons raged with electric fire, streaking through the black like veins of anger. The Ardent Reach emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the storm, its hull trembling against the static tides. In the command deck, Corrin stood beside Juno Rest, armor gleaming in the ghost light of the nebula. He felt the storm inside him, too, alive, humming, waiting for something to fight. Convoys here, Juno said, pointing at the flickering holodisplay. Dozens of Dominion transports crawled along the debris field below, escorted by sleek Aurelian frigates. 200,000 tons of fuel and weapon cores. That's enough to power half their fleet. We hit them hard and fast, they won't recover soon. Corrin's gaze narrowed. What about their escorts? Juno grimaced. 5 light frigates, maybe a cruiser lurking in the back. We can handle it if your miracle suit does half of what the techs say it can. He didn't answer. The armor was silent, its glow faint beneath the dim lights. It felt like a second skin now, cold, aware, always listening. Since bonding with it, his mind had been sharper, his reflexes faster. But sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he heard things, whispers of old battles, names he didn't know, commands in a language that wasn't his. He had stopped trying to tell if they were memories or warnings. The ship's alarms pulsed once, signaling readiness. Deploy in 5, Juno ordered. The hangar lights dimmed as the first drop pods locked into launch sequence. Corrin turned toward the bay doors, his squad already waiting, men and women wearing scavenged armor, eyes burning with a cause bigger than themselves. Mira stepped forward, her voice low. You sure about this, Vale? They say that armor of yours thinks for itself. Then it'll learn to think like me, he said, and stepped into the pod. The drop sequence began. The pod screamed through atmosphere, shaking violently. Through the view slit, the convoy glittered below, rows of golden transports guarded by curved, radiant warships. The armor responded to his focus, its systems blooming alive inside his vision. Target designations appeared, trajectories calculated before he even moved. He didn't need to think about it. It was instinct. Or maybe not his at all. Impact. The pod hit the lead transport's hull with a thunderclap. The doors blew outward, and Corrin leapt into chaos. His rifle fired before he registered the trigger. O'Reilly guards turned, beams of blue light slashing through the air. Corrin deflected them with his forearm plate, the energy dispersing like rain against the armor. He moved faster than his body should allow, a blur of black and fire. Each motion carried memory, ancient precision, Sarental's ghost guiding his hand. The rebels poured from other pods, joining the assault. Explosions rolled across the convoy's flank. Corrin landed atop a fallen frigate, scanning the field. The armor's vision pulsed, showing him weak points, weapon charges, shield harmonics. He relayed commands to the fleet without realizing he was speaking. Juno's voice crackled in his ear, half in awe, half in fear. "Corrin, how are you doing that?" He didn't know. The armor was thinking through him. Calculating. Killing. An O'Reilly warlord descended on a graph field, his armor gleaming white. "Blasphemer," the alien hissed through telepathic static. "You defile our sacred dead." Corrin's reply came like steel. "He chose me." They collided midair, plasma blades shrieking. The Aurelian's weapon carved arcs of light, but Corrin moved with impossible precision. The armor's memory guided every block, every counterstrike. When his blade plunged through the alien's chest, the armor's pulse flared, and Corrin felt the echo of satisfaction that wasn't his own. He landed among the wreckage, breathing hard. Around him, the battle was ending. The rebels had taken 3 transports and crippled 2 frigates. The rest were retreating toward the storm. The armor's HUD flickered with data, tactical projections cascading in languages he couldn't read. Then came the whisper. "Finish them." Corrin froze. "They're fleeing," he said aloud. "No mercy for tyrants. No retreat for the guilty." He felt his arm raise, targeting the escaping ships. The gauntlet's weapon systems whined as they charged. He tried to stop, but the armor resisted, overriding him. The power thrummed through his nerves like rage given form. "Justice must be absolute," the voice insisted. "Stop," he shouted, forcing his hand down. Pain ripped through him as the armor fought his will. It wanted blood, demanded closure. For a moment, he thought it would consume him. Then, through sheer defiance, he severed the connection, one thought, one command: "I am not your weapon." The armor froze. The light dimmed. The escaping ships vanished into the storm. Silence fell over the field. "Vale." Juno's voice crackled in his ear again. "Talk to me. What happened?" He looked down at his hands. The armor was slick with ash and Aurelian blood. "We won," he said flatly. "For now." When the rebels regrouped aboard the Ardent Reach, the hangar filled with cheers and exhaustion. But Corrin felt none of it. He stood apart, the armor whispering quietly in the back of his mind, a lullaby of conquest and sorrow. He could feel its memories pressing closer, hundreds of battles, centuries of O'Reilly victories, every death stored inside like scripture. He shut his eyes. For a second, he was standing on a different battlefield, Sarental's final stand. He saw O'Reilly soldiers turning on their own champion, saw the light fade from Saren's crystalline eyes. Then he saw himself in that place, wearing the same armor, surrounded by the same betrayal. He staggered, clutching at the railing. Mira was there, catching him. "Corrin," she said, voice low. "You're burning out." He opened his eyes. The armor's glow had faded to a dull red. "Not yet," he said. "But it's trying to change me." Juno approached, crossing her arms. "Then maybe it's time to take it off." He looked at her, eyes hollow. If I do, we lose everything. The commander said nothing. The storm outside flashed against the viewport, painting the hangar in blood-colored light. The armor pulsed once more, faint but alive, and Corrin felt it whisper again, softer this time, almost human. You cannot free the slaves if you fear what freedom costs. He didn't answer. He just stood there, watching the lightning crawl across the void, knowing the war outside was nothing compared to the one now alive inside his skin. The ardent reach drifted through the dust belt of the dead system, its hull scarred from the convoy raid. Silence filled the ship like a wound that refused to close. The rebels had celebrated the victory for hours, but by morning the laughter had died, replaced by whispers about what they had seen Corrin do. The way he moved, the way the armor seemed to breathe. They were grateful, yes, but afraid. Corrin sat alone in the armory, helmet on the floor beside him, staring at his reflection in the curved steel wall. The armor's inner light had dimmed to a faint pulse, like a heartbeat too weak to continue. It should have been comforting, but he could still feel it inside him, coiled and patient. His thoughts weren't entirely his anymore. Sometimes they came with an echo, a second voice, calm and ancient, finishing his sentences before he could. Juno entered without knocking. She leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. We're picking up transmissions from the core, she said. The Dominion knows it was us. They've put a bounty on your head, on all of ours, really, but mostly you. Corrin didn't look up. Then we hit them again before they find us. That's not a plan, it's suicide. Everything we do is suicide. We just decide when. Juno pushed off the wall and came closer. You don't even sound like yourself anymore. Since that armor bonded with you, you've been changing. I can see it in your eyes. It's like it's whispering to you. He gave a tired laugh. Maybe it is. Then you need to fight it. If that thing takes control. It already did, he interrupted softly. And I took it back. He finally met her gaze. For now. Juno studied him for a moment, then sighed. We can't keep flying blind. There's a contact near the outer rim, Arel Ven. Used to be an Aurelian defector before the purge. If anyone knows how that armor works, it's him. I want you there. Corrin rose slowly. The armor adjusted around him like liquid metal. Fine. But if he tries to take it from me. He won't, she said. He's too scared of what it can do. They jumped into hyperspace at dawn. The stars stretched into rivers of light, and the ship hummed like a living thing. Corrin watched the flow of color from the viewport, his reflection overlaying the stars. For a moment, his reflection moved before he did, a faint shimmer, like another will trapped beneath the surface. When they dropped out of hyperspace, Arel's base came into view, a fractured moon orbiting a dying planet, held together by rusted scaffolding and stubbornness. The docking bay was lined with old Aurelian tech, dim lights flickering like ghosts. Arel Ven was waiting at the airlock, wrapped in tattered robes, his body threaded with cybernetic implants. His eyes were crystalline, faintly glowing, remnants of what he had once been. So it's true, he said as Corrin stepped forward. The armor lives again. It's not alive, Corrin said. Arel's expression twisted. You think that because it allows you to think so. Tell me, do you still dream? Sometimes. And in those dreams, do you see him? The one who wore it before you? Corrin hesitated. Yes. Arel nodded slowly, as if confirming a prophecy. Then you've already begun the merging. The armor doesn't choose by chance. It remembers its master. It remembers loyalty, command, betrayal. You are walking his memories, human. You are becoming Saren Tal. The name struck like a blow. He was their champion. Their monster. He was both, Arel said. He rebelled against them before the end. Tried to end the cycle of conquest. They killed him for it, and sealed his essence in the armor so he would fight for them even in death. That is what you wear now, the mind of a dead god, caged in metal. Corrin felt the armor stir, the inner lights flaring in response. The whisper came again, faint and familiar, he lies. I fought for peace. Aurel stepped back, wary. It speaks, doesn't it? Sometimes. Then you must listen carefully. It will offer power beyond comprehension, but it does not distinguish between salvation and annihilation. It only knows completion. Corrin's jaw tightened. Can it be removed? Aurel shook his head. Not without killing you both. The bond is deeper than flesh. But there is a way to silence it, temporarily. He gestured toward a small chamber behind him. A neural disruptor. It can sever the link between your mind and the armor. Dangerous, but it might give you clarity. Juno frowned. Might? Aurel's lips twitched. Or it might burn his neural pathways and leave him an empty shell. Choice is his. Corrin looked at the chamber, at the coils of light running through the old Aurelian machine. If I do this and live, will it stop influencing me? For a time. But the armor will remember the separation as pain. It will fight to restore the connection. Corrin turned to Juno. If this goes wrong. Don't, she said sharply. We'll find another way. There isn't one. He stepped into the chamber before anyone could stop him. The door sealed shut, and the hum of ancient machinery filled the room. Aurel activated the device, and arcs of light ran through the armor. Corrin screamed as the energy tore through his body. The whisper in his mind turned to a roar. You cannot silence me. Get out of my head, he gasped, falling to his knees. You are my continuation. My vengeance. The light flared so bright it drowned everything. For an instant, he saw Sarental standing before him, tall, radiant, eyes filled with sorrow. If you destroy me, you destroy the only thing keeping you alive. Then the world went black. When the light faded, the chamber door opened. Corrin stumbled out, pale, trembling, the armor dark and lifeless. He looked around like a man waking from a dream. Juno caught him before he fell. It's gone, he whispered. The voice, it's gone. But Aurel's expression was grim. No, he said quietly. It's sleeping. And when it wakes, it will not forgive you. Outside, the dying planet turned slowly beneath them, its last light fading into shadow. The storm was coming again, but this time, it would not be in the skies. It would be inside him. The hum of the ardent reach had never sounded so fragile. Every vibration through the deck felt too sharp, too aware, as if the ship itself feared what walked its halls. Corrin moved through the corridors like a ghost, the dull weight of silence clinging to him. The armor was still on his body, but lifeless, its glow extinguished, its voice gone. He could feel the absence like an ache in his chest, a phantom limb of something greater. The others gave him space, pretending not to stare, but he could sense their unease. Without the armor's power, he was just another human with too many enemies and not enough time. Juno found him in the observation deck, staring at the stars. She didn't speak for a while, just stood beside him, the hum of distant systems filling the air. You should be resting, she said finally. I can't sleep. Still hearing it? He shook his head. That's the problem. It's too quiet. It's like a part of me is missing. Juno crossed her arms. You wanted it gone. I wanted control. Not emptiness. He exhaled, watching the fog of his breath blur against the glass. Do you think it's right? Using a weapon built on someone else's will? You mean someone else's soul? He looked at her sharply, but she didn't flinch. You said it yourself, she went on. That thing was alive. You're carrying what's left of Sarental. Maybe what you did was mercy. Or betrayal. Before she could answer, the ship's alarms erupted. Red light washed over the deck, sirens echoing through the corridors. The intercom crackled, Dominion interceptors incoming. 6 signatures, closing fast. Corin and Juno ran for the bridge. Through the viewport, the cold glitter of enemy ships grew larger by the second. Black-winged vessels bearing the sigil of House Kane. Virella, Corin muttered. Juno snapped orders to the crew. Shields to full. Ready the aft cannons. Corin, if there's anything left of that armor. It's dead. Then pray it wakes up fast. The first barrage struck, shaking the ship violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling, consoles flickered. The Ardent Reach fired back, but the interceptors moved with terrifying precision, their formation perfect. Through the chaos, a transmission cut through the noise, clear, elegant, and cruel. So it's true, came the voice, smooth and venomous. The slave who wears a god's skin. Corin froze. The voice was young, but heavy with arrogance. Virella Kane, he said. A hollow laugh filled the bridge. You desecrate my house's honor wearing the armor of Saren Tau. You think it belongs to you? You think you understand what it means? Better than you ever could. Then die wearing it. The transmission cut. The next salvo hit harder, slamming the ship sideways. Corin fell against the bulkhead, vision spinning. The crew struggled to keep control, shouting over the alarms. He felt the armor's weight like lead, silent, cold. Wake up, he thought. If you ever meant what you said, if you ever fought for mercy, then fight with me now. No answer. Just the sound of tearing metal and dying engines. Juno grabbed his arm. We're not going to make it. Another explosion ripped through the hull. The ship buckled, artificial gravity flickering. Through the viewport, one of the Dominion ships broke formation, charging directly toward them. And then, he felt it. A pulse. Faint but real. Deep beneath his skin, the armor stirred. The dormant circuits flickered to life, one by one, like embers reigniting. The cold weight became warmth. He heard it, distant, strained, but alive. You silenced me, and yet you call. I need you, he whispered. No, the voice replied. You need purpose. The armor flared awake. Light crawled across his body, veins of energy tracing every joint. The pain returned, but this time it didn't break him. It steadied him. He stood, the world sharpening into perfect clarity. The crew stepped back as the armor sealed over his face. Corin, Juno began, but he was already moving. The bridge doors hissed open, and he strode down the hall toward the airlock. The ship trembled with another hit, but he didn't slow. He reached the launch bay. The force field shimmered before the void, and beyond it, the Dominion fleet hung like vultures. The armor spoke again, its tone colder now. We fight not for vengeance, but for balance. He stepped into the airlock and released the outer seal. The vacuum seized him, but the armor compensated instantly, stabilizing him as he drifted into the open. The stars around him burned white and red. One of the Dominion ships rotated to face him, charging its weapons. Corin raised his arm, and the armor responded. Energy built around his gauntlet, a field of golden light spinning into existence. The first barrage hit, and vanished into the field, absorbed, redirected. He clenched his fist, and the energy released in a single, blinding arc. The interceptor exploded, fragments scattering across the void. The voice in his head whispered, softer now. You see. We are not chains. We are choice. He turned toward the rest of the fleet. The armor's wings unfolded, curved structures of radiant metal, and with a surge of motion, he launched himself into the fray. The next minutes blurred into chaos, fire, light, motion. The armor moved faster than thought, intercepting plasma rounds, cutting through hulls like paper. Corrin's mind was half his own, half the ghost within him, their wills woven together in a strange, perfect rhythm. The Dominion fleet broke formation, scattering. On the flagship, Lady Varela Kane watched from her command deck, her golden eyes narrowing. "So this is the power he stole," she murmured. "Then I'll take it back with his corpse." She rose from her throne, her own armor unfolding from the floor around her, sleek, regal, the mark of her bloodline. "Prepare my pod," she ordered. "If the ghost wants war, I'll give him one." Outside, the battle raged on. Corrin moved through the debris like a storm, his breathing steady, the whisper in his mind growing stronger. "The blood of empires flows again," it said. "This time, let it end." But even as he fought, a tremor of doubt ran through him. The armor's power was intoxicating, endless, and in its strength, he felt his own thoughts slipping. He wasn't sure where he ended and Sarental began. Still, he pressed forward, through fire and ruin, toward the ship that carried his enemy's voice. The stars burned brighter than ever, and somewhere deep inside the armor, the ghost smiled. The Dominion flagship loomed ahead, a leviathan of glass and steel, its hull carved with the sigils of House Kane. Turrets turned toward him like eyes narrowing in fury, but Corrin didn't slow. The armor thrummed with power, light spilling from every seam as the void howled around him. The ship's shields flared blue as he struck, his gauntlet hand driving into the barrier. Energy screamed through the contact, the field rippling, bending, and finally collapsing under the weight of something older than its own technology. He landed hard on the hull, metal buckling beneath his feet. The armor's wings folded back into his spine, their glow fading as the suit adjusted for combat density. Inside his mind, the voice pulsed with an ancient calm. "She comes." The airlock ahead burst open before he could move. A shockwave of force threw debris into the void. Out stepped Lady Varela Kane, her own armor gleaming like obsidian flame. Unlike his, hers was smooth and perfect, crafted for royalty, not war. The visor retracted to reveal her face, young, proud, eyes burning gold with the arrogance of lineage. "So," she said, voice clear even through the vacuum, transmitted by neural link. "The lost slave who dares wear my champion's skin." Corrin's voice came through the suit, low and steady. "He wasn't yours. He served my house," she snapped. "He bled for it. You desecrate him with your touch." "He saved me from your house," Corrin replied. "And now I'll return the favor." Her smile was cold. "Then prove you deserve what you've stolen." She lunged. The impact shattered the hull beneath them. Her movements were impossibly fast, her blade slicing arcs of violet plasma through the darkness. Corrin met her blow for blow, sparks scattering into the void, their strikes echoing through the emptiness like thunder without air. Each clash sent vibrations through his bones, through the armor's living structure. "She is trained in the first lineage techniques," the voice whispered. "She carries the seed of Saren's final students." "Then she knows how he died," Corrin hissed. "And she intends to repeat it." Varela's next strike slipped through his guard, slicing across his shoulder. Pain flared, not from flesh but from the armor itself, a wound shared between them. The suit screamed inside his mind, a resonance of agony. "You're slower than the stories said," Varela taunted. "Has the ghost forgotten how to fight?" Corrin steadied himself. The armor's systems recalibrated, data flowing into his nerves, predictions forming faster than thought. He feinted left, then struck low, his gauntlet slamming into her midsection. The force sent her skidding across the hull, fracturing the plating beneath her boots. "Not slow enough," he said. Varela laughed, rising. "Good. I'd hate for this to be easy." She raised her hand, and the sky behind her flared. Dozens of drones detached from her flagship, sleek spheres humming with ion energy, forming a storm around them. Corrin's sensors flared warnings. Adaptive weapons. She will flood the field with dissonant frequencies. It will disrupt our link. Then we end it before she can. He leapt forward as the drones fired, a hail of plasma lighting the void. The armor's wings unfurled again, shielding him in a shell of refracted energy. He broke through the barrage, closing the gap in an instant. Their blades met once more, the clash bright enough to blind. Virella struck high, low, high again, each movement elegant, precise. Corin countered with brute force, the armor amplifying his strength beyond human limits. Every motion was guided by instinct and memory not his own. The ghost fought with him, not against him this time, their wills momentarily aligned. She caught his arm, twisted, and drove her knee into his chest. The impact cracked the armor's outer plating. Corin grunted, driving his forehead into her helm in response. Metal crumpled, sparks burst, and both staggered back. "You fight like him," she said through gritted teeth. "But you'll die like him too." Corin's breathing was ragged. "If he died fighting monsters like you, then maybe I'll take the same end." Her golden eyes flickered with rage. "You think you know what we are? We were gods once. Your kind were dust beneath our feet. That armor was never meant for you, it was forged from the will of conquerors. And yet it chose me." Her expression faltered. "Lies." He lifted his blade, its edge burning with the armor's light. "Ask it yourself." For the first time, the voice spoke aloud through the comms, its tone calm and terrible. "You forget, child. I forged this will to protect, not to serve." Virella froze. "Saren. What remains of him?" the voice said. "You dishonor his memory with your hatred." Her composure cracked. "He betrayed us. He turned his blade on his own kind. He turned it toward tyranny. As will I again." She screamed and charged, fury driving her. The two collided in a burst of light and debris. Corin met her rage with focus, each strike echoing through the void like a heartbeat. The ghost guided him, moving faster than thought, anticipating her rage. Then, an opening. He caught her wrist, twisted, and drove his blade through her chest. The energy flared, burning through her armor. She gasped, eyes wide in disbelief. He held her there, breathing hard. The armor pulsed beneath his hands, whispering softly. "End it." "No," Corin said. "She's not the enemy. The system that made her is." Virella stared at him, confusion and fury warring in her eyes. "You pity me?" "I understand you," he said quietly. "I was you once." He released her, letting her fall to her knees. Her armor sparked and hissed, systems failing. Behind them, the Dominion flagship trembled as its control systems began to falter. "Mercy," the ghost murmured. "Always mercy." Corin looked down at her. "Tell your people," he said, voice steady. "The age of chains is over." He turned away as her armor's lights dimmed. The drones hung motionless in the air, their link severed. The silence of victory spread through the stars. But inside the armor, deep beneath his heartbeat, another sound began to grow, a low, rising hum. The ghost stirred, stronger now, its presence no longer just a whisper. "Well done," it said. "Now, let us see what remains of this galaxy to claim." Corin froze. "That's not what we agreed." "You gave me purpose again, Corin Vale." "Did you think purpose ends with mercy?" The stars around him seemed to darken. He could feel the armor tightening, its energy building again, no longer content to rest. He realized then that Virella Kane had not been the last enemy, only the first. The ghost was awake, and it wanted more. The aftermath hung in silence. The Dominion flagship drifted, torn open and burning, its dying lights flickering across the black sea of stars. Fragments of hull drifted like ash. Corin stood upon the ruined surface, armor gleaming faintly in the debris light. He should have felt relief. Instead, his pulse pounded with something darker. The armor's hum had grown steady, no longer a whisper, but a presence breathing alongside him. He stared at his reflection in a fractured viewport, two figures overlaid in the glass, his own scarred face, and the faint echo of another, regal and inhuman. Serentau watched him from within the reflection, eyes like twin stars. "You hesitated," the voice said. "Mercy again. It will destroy you." She was beaten. She was a symbol. She was a person. Silence, then a faint pulse through his chest. Symbols are what make people dangerous. He turned away, anger flaring. "You said you wanted peace. I wanted balance. And balance cannot exist while the Dominion lives." The words echoed inside him, heavy as iron. He looked toward the ardent reach gliding closer through the wreckage. Juno's voice crackled through the calm, "Corin, report. We're picking you up. The flagship's collapsing, we don't have much time." He didn't answer. The armor's wings unfurled, catching the faint starlight. "You'll stay quiet," he murmured under his breath. "Until you call me again," it replied. He pushed off the hull, streaking through the void toward the reach. The landing bay doors opened, drawing him in. The moment he set foot inside, the crew scattered back, some in awe, others in fear. The armor still glowed faintly, like a living sun contained in a human shape. Juno rushed forward, scanning him with trembling hands. "Are you hurt?" "No," he said, voice distant. She frowned. "You don't sound fine." "I said I'm not hurt." Behind her, Aurel then appeared, his cybernetic eyes narrowing. "You reconnected with it." Corin didn't respond. Aurel stepped closer. "I told you it would fight back. You think you've mastered it, but it's learning you, rewriting you. Every battle strengthens its consciousness." Corin turned toward him slowly. "You think I don't know that? Then stop wearing it before you disappear completely. Without it, we'd all be dead." Aurel's voice rose. "And with it, you may doom more than yourself. The armor doesn't distinguish between savior and conqueror, it only remembers victory." Juno intervened, stepping between them. "Enough. We'll deal with it later. Right now, we need to get clear before the Dominion sends reinforcements." Corin turned toward the viewport as the engines roared to life. The flagship behind them exploded in slow silence, fire and light rippling across the void. The crew cheered faintly, but Corin felt nothing. The ghost within him hummed like a heartbeat. "You've done what they could not. Do not let them make you small again." He clenched his fists until the metal creaked. "I'm not your weapon. You are my echo." He shut his eyes, forcing the voice down, focusing on the faint rhythm of the ship. He could feel every vibration through the armor, each pulse of energy, each shift of pressure. He realized he could sense their fear, taste it in the air like static. They no longer saw him as a man. Hours later, he sat alone in the ready room. The lights were dim. His armor retracted halfway, leaving his face bare, sweat glistening on his skin. He could still feel the ghost's awareness flickering inside him, pacing the edges of his thoughts. Juno entered quietly. "You should sleep." "I can't." She hesitated, then sat across from him. "You saved us, Corin. Whatever it's doing to you. Whatever you think, it's still you in there." He looked up, eyes hollow. "Is it? I can feel him when I move. His instincts. His voice. I can't tell where he ends and I start anymore. Then hold on to what's real. To what's yours." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "What if I'm the part that's fading?" Juno reached out, placing a hand on his arm. The armor pulsed beneath her touch, reacting instinctively. For a second, she saw light travel through the veins of metal, spreading toward her hand. She pulled back sharply. "It's feeding on your neural field," she said, breathless. "Even when it's resting." He stood abruptly, pacing. So it's alive. So am I. We need it, Juno. The Dominion won't stop. There are still worlds in chains. Her voice softened. And when you free them all, what then? What happens when the ghost inside you decides peace isn't enough? He didn't answer. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted like cold embers. Later, when the ship entered silent orbit around a dead moon, Corrin found himself back in the forge bay. The armor stood partially open, light pulsing faintly in its chest. He approached, the room empty except for the hum of the engines. I don't trust you, he said quietly. Nor should you. Then why do you keep fighting with me? Because you remind me of what I once wanted to be. He stared at the shifting light, unable to speak. But remember, the ghost continued, mercy has a cost. You spared her. She will return with 1,000 more. The Dominion is endless unless you end it utterly. He closed his eyes. That's not the way. It is the only way. The armor's light flared, shadows twisting across the walls. Corrin turned away, forcing himself to leave, but the hum followed him, growing fainter as he walked, until it faded back into silence. In the corridor, Juno watched him go, worry etched into her face. She'd seen the glow under his skin when he passed, faint golden veins pulsing in rhythm with the ship's heart. She whispered to herself, he's becoming it. Far beyond the dead moon, in the deep Dominion sectors, new signals began to awaken, ancient Aurelian beacons long dormant. One by one, they flared to life, responding to a frequency that had not existed for centuries. The armor's song had been heard. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like distant embers, cold and patient. The ardent reach drifted silently through the void, its lights dimmed to avoid detection. In the command deck, the air was heavy, no one spoke unless necessary. The crew moved with hushed precision, shadows under the pale blue of the consoles. Corrin stood at the front, armor dormant but faintly alive, the faint pulse of its energy echoing through the metal floor. Juno's voice broke the silence. We're approaching the coordinates. But the readings are strange. How strange? Corrin asked, not turning. The beacons aren't just transmitting, they're synchronizing. Someone's waking them up in sequence, like a network. Corrin's jaw tightened. The Dominion? Arel shook his head from the sensor station. No. Dominion tech doesn't resonate at these frequencies. These are Aurelian signals. The word hung in the air like a curse. Juno glanced at Corrin. Your armor started to pulse 3 days ago. Maybe it's calling to them. Corrin said nothing. His reflection in the viewport looked alien now, the faint golden trace under his skin catching the light. Arel's hands moved over the console, his voice low. If those beacons fully awaken, we're talking about a chain reaction across the entire Aurelian network. Energy bursts, gateways, resonance cascades, we could lose half the sector before we even understand what it's doing. The ghost stirred inside him. Do not resist this. The song is meant to be heard. Corrin clenched his fists. Shut up. Juno looked up. What? Nothing, he said, too quickly. The armor pulsed again. This time, everyone felt it, a low vibration through the hull. The lights flickered. Arel cursed. The ship's systems are reacting to the same frequency. Whatever that armor's doing, it's rewriting our power lattice. Corrin's eyes flared faintly, the light matching the armor's heartbeat. It's not me. It's them. Outside, the dark space ahead rippled. Beacons, massive structures of crystal and alloy, came into view, arranged in a perfect circle around a void that seemed to devour light. Streams of blue energy linked them, weaving a geometric cage around nothingness. Juno whispered, "What is that?" Arel swallowed. Aurelian Gate Core. I thought they were myths. The ghost's voice filled Corrin's mind. It is not myth. It is return. He staggered slightly as visions slammed into him, cities of light, towers reaching through nebulae, beings of radiant form walking among stars. Then, fire. Endless wars. The Dominions rise. The Aurelians fall. And a final act, sealing their power away so none could misuse it again. Until now. Corin gasped, gripping the edge of the console. Juno ran to him. Corin. What's happening? He looked up, eyes burning gold. They're coming back. Who? The Aurelians. The crew froze. Aurel whispered, you said they were extinct. They were. But this armor, it's their key. Their memory. I think I just turned the lock. Juno shook her head. Then turn it off. I can't. It's not listening anymore. The ship trembled. The void ahead began to expand, edges glowing with ancient light. It wasn't just opening, it was awakening. Corin felt the ghost's presence surging, its tone no longer calm but triumphant. The cycle begins anew. Flesh and light, bound once more. We will bring balance. He shouted aloud, you don't get to decide that. Juno flinched back, watching as arcs of energy laced through the air around him. The armor reformed over his body in a flash of molten gold, sealing him inside before anyone could stop it. The deck's gravity distorted for an instant as the energy surged outward. Aurel tried to stabilize the systems. He's merging, signal spikes across the whole spectrum. We're losing control of the core. Corin. Juno called, grabbing the railing. Fight it. His voice came through the calm, distorted and deeper. I'm trying. Then, silence. The light consuming him dimmed for a heartbeat, then flared again, brighter than before. The gate outside responded. The beacons pulsed in perfect rhythm with his heartbeat. Through the chaos, the Dominion fleet arrived, dozens of ships dropping from FTL, weapons primed. Their commander's voice crackled across the open channel. Human vessel, surrender immediately. You are in violation of sealed Aurelian territory. Juno's voice snapped through gritted teeth. You don't understand what you're walking into. The Dominion ignored her. Energy signatures spiked as their ships prepared to fire. Corin's body straightened. The ghost spoke through him, voice layered, resonant, divine. Then let them witness. Golden wings erupted from the armor, stretching wide, brushing against the air like the edges of dawn. A single pulse of energy burst from his chest, no weapon, no projectile, just pure resonance. The Dominion's ships flickered and vanished, erased without flame or sound, scattered into subatomic dust. When the light faded, Juno stared in horror. Corin, what did you do? He turned toward her, eyes burning with light that was not human. They were a threat. They were alive. They were chains. His voice was layered with another's, impossible to separate. Aurel raised his weapon, voice trembling. That's not him anymore. Corin looked at him and, for a moment, his expression softened. The glow dimmed slightly. I'm still here. Juno stepped forward carefully. Then prove it. Shut it down. Stop the gate. He looked back at the expanding light, torn between two worlds. The ghost whispered inside him, seductive and calm. End it, and end the suffering forever. His hands trembled. He felt the weight of every life, every scream, every broken world, and every hope that still clung to the edge of survival. Then, through the roar of power, his own voice broke through. No. He tore the helmet free. The armor screamed, light spilling from every joint. You want balance? Then let me choose what it means. The gate flared, an explosion of gold and white swallowing the stars. The ardent reach was thrown backward, alarms blaring. Through the chaos, Juno's eyes caught one final glimpse of Corin standing before the light, human and infinite at once, then the void consumed everything. Silence. The kind that comes after the universe itself holds its breath. Where the only sound is the hum of cooling metal and the soft, uncertain rhythm of life daring to begin again. Fragments of the ardent reach drifted among a sea of dying light. The nebula that had once burned gold and white was now a gray expanse, pulsing with faint threads of residual energy. Juno's voice echoed softly through the emergency channel, shaky but alive. Corin. Do you read? Please, if you can hear me, answer. Static. Then a low crackle. I'm here. Relief hit her so sharply she almost sobbed. Where the hell are you? A pause. Then, quietly, everywhere and nowhere. The armor's gone. The gate too. But I think, we're free. The comm hissed out. She slammed her hand on the console. Corin. Damn it, talk to me. No response came, only the whisper of energy fading from the stars. Around her, the surviving crew of the Reach stirred, bloodied, exhausted, stunned that they were still breathing. Arel's arm was broken, half the navigation deck was gone. But they were alive. Somehow, impossibly, alive. Outside, the Aurelian beacons floated in disarray, their crystalline bodies cracked and dim. The Dominion fleet was gone, erased, disassembled into the dust of unmade atoms. In their place, a silence that felt sacred. A soft chime pulled Juno's attention back to her console. An incoming message, no encryption, no signal ID, just a voice carried through raw subspace. Freedom isn't given, Corin's voice said, quiet, roughened. It's remembered. The message ended, but something else began to rise, a wave of data, scattering across every known system. Transmission relays lit up, one after another, spanning worlds once crushed beneath the Dominion's rule. Across the galaxy, enslaved laborers looked up from their chains to see holograms bloom in the air, a human in golden light, speaking words the system could not censor. This war was built on ownership. On who deserves to live, and who must serve. But the truth is simpler. We are all remnants of something greater, bound by the same memory of freedom. Remember it. And you'll never kneel again. The speech spread faster than fire. On mining worlds, slaves tore off their identifiers. In cities once draped in Aurelian banners, the noble houses turned inward, their power fracturing under the weight of guilt and revelation. Some fled, others surrendered. The Dominion, the empire that had lasted 1,000 years, fell within weeks, its core systems collapsing into rebellion. Juno watched the feeds pour in, every image carrying the same echo, Corin's voice, reshaped and amplified by 1,000 tongues. Freedom isn't given. It's remembered. But she couldn't celebrate. Not yet. She walked through the ruined corridors of the ship, past flickering lights and silent bulkheads, until she reached the observation deck. There, in the shattered glass, the nebula shimmered faintly, like a wound slowly healing. Where did you go? She whispered. The air shimmered. For a heartbeat, she saw him, standing outside the ship, no suit, no armor, just a figure of faint, radiant light. The energy that once consumed him now pulsed softly, alive but gentle, as if the armor itself had become part of him. She pressed her hand to the viewport. You could have stayed. His voice came, not from the comms, not from the air, but inside her mind, familiar and calm. If I stayed, the balance wouldn't hold. The gate wasn't just a weapon, it was a memory core. It held everything they were, everything they lost. Someone had to guide it home. Tears welled in her eyes. So you're one of them now. He smiled faintly, a warmth in the void. No. I'm what they couldn't be. What we should be. Free. The light around him brightened. Take care of them, Juno. The humans. The freed. They'll need someone who remembers how this all began. Don't you dare make this sound like goodbye, she said, voice trembling. But he was already fading, scattering into 1,000 motes of light that drifted toward the stars. It's not. It's a beginning. When he vanished, the nebula flared once, briefly golden, then quiet again. Weeks passed. The Ardent Reach was rebuilt, renamed the Dawn Voyager. Juno captained it herself, leading a new coalition fleet: humans, defected Aurelians, liberated synths, even Dominion-born deserters. The galaxy was unstable, fragile, full of wounds and ghosts. But there was hope. In the archives of the new alliance, historians debated endlessly about Corin Vale. Some said he died at the gate's collapse. Others insisted he transcended. A few whispered that he still traveled the outer systems, a figure of light appearing where rebellion sparked and vanishing once freedom took root. Juno never corrected them. Some myths, she decided, were worth keeping. One evening, years later, she stood again at a viewport, watching the same nebula they once called the Wound. Now it had a new name, the Dawnfield. It glowed softly, steady and alive. A faint hum stirred the glass. She smiled, recognizing the pattern. A heartbeat. Somewhere out there, he was still watching. Still fighting. She whispered to the stars, "We remember." And in answer, across the void, the nebula flared once more, golden and bright, like the first light of a new world being born.